Good luck, y'all.
Welcome to Day 5 of 8th grade speeches. Thank you all for joining us today. Before we get started, please join me in prayer. Bow your heads. Dear Lord, thank you for everyone gathered here now. We are blessed that you know each of us by name and are always by our sides. Fill our hearts with your presence and please be with today's speakers. Give them confidence, reassurance, and peace. Amen. Please welcome our first speaker, Clara Fuller, who is speaking on paying college athletes.
On September 15, 2021, the NCAA, or National Collegiate Athletic Association, made it possible for college athletes to get paid for the first time in history. I have always loved watching sports. I'm an athletic person and I love anything to do with sports. When I found out college athletes were going to be paid, I immediately wanted to know more about this topic. I feel it is important for students who want to play sports in college to learn about this because it could affect their future. Today, I will share why colleges chose to allow their athletes to earn money, examine whether or not college athletes should be paid, and share how these athletes are making money. In 2021, the Supreme Court ruled that colleges and universities cannot directly pay their athletes. But colleges were also told that they cannot place any limits on education-related benefits that student athletes can receive for playing sports in college. If an athlete lives in a state where this law is in action, they can legally profit from their NIL, or name, image, and likeness. As of June 10, 2021, 18 states have passed NIL laws. 5 more states have passed bills that are awaiting the governor's signature to become law. 14 states have introduced NIL bills, and 1 state has a bill passed by the Senate and awaiting a House vote, according to the Business of College Sports. As you can see, many states like the idea of this and are working to get bills signed. Signing the NIL bill would mean student athletes could get sponsorships, give lessons, or have autograph sessions for profit. Now that college athletes are allowed to earn money from their name, image, and likeness, the question why comes up. The NCAA felt it was necessary for the athletes to get money for their image and popularity so that the schools were not the only ones to profit from their fame. Also, depending on the school, some athletes attract more fans. This means the college gets more money because of the tickets sold. The NCAA felt it was only fair for the athletes to receive some of this money that the colleges attract themselves. Without those athletes, there might not be as much desire to attend a game at that school. These new rules allow athletes to be sponsored by companies. They can earn money by promoting the company's product. Those items may include protein shakes, hydration drinks, clothes, or businesses. Many of these athletes promote these items on social media or local television and radio ads. On the flip side, there are those who still feel that student athletes shouldn't be able to earn money. even from NIL. Most college athletes receive some sort of scholarship, whether that is full ride or partial. For many athletes, that usually means that they are not only earning a free education, but also earning many perks other students don't get. Those may include concerts, movies, fitness facilities, or various clubs. As an athlete with a full-ride scholarship, you also have access to sports facilities, gyms, fields, courts, sports medicine care, meal plans, free footwear, and athletic attire. Some feel that because student athletes are typically rewarded through scholarships, they don't have a need to earn money through any other means. If you attend a Division I school, the tuition is typically more expensive. This is why colleges give athletic scholarships, to help students who may not be able to pay for college but are talented athletes who want to play their sport at a collegiate level. Scholarships are fair financial payment for college athletes, especially considering the risky finances of athletic departments. These colleges and universities offer so much more than just education and sports. Some feel that the athletes should just appreciate all the cool things they have access to and not worry about earning money off of their fame and success. According to the NCAA, they provide more than $3.6 billion in athletic scholarships annually to more than 180,000 student athletes. Divided equitably, each student would make about $20,000 per year. What makes the NIL rule work? Even though some feel this way, it is that it's not the schools who are paying the athletes, but other private businesses and companies who are confiscating the students. The NCAA changed its rules, allowing athletes to earn money off of their name, image, and likeness. Colleges, student athletes, and brands are still trying to figure out how to navigate a web of state laws and university guidelines around what college athletes are and aren't allowed to do with their names, images, and likenesses. This is all very new to everyone and is definitely going to take a little while to get used to. Thank you. Please welcome Connor Rogers, who is speaking on college football realignment.
College football fans always need to know about the realignment of their favorite conferences, but what is it? According to Merriam-Webster, the definition of realignment is to reorganize or to make new groupings of. This is exactly what takes place in the conferences with college football. Every year or so, a few teams leave conferences and join new ones. When big teams realign into different conferences, the whole college football landscape can change. If a conference loses too many of its teams, it could dissolve completely. To understand college football conference realignment, we must first look at what it is, its pros and cons, and realignment that is happening right now. Money is a major factor in college football conference realignment. If a good teams move to an already good conference networks will benefit greatly from the amount of viewers coming in to watch these important games between two powerful teams. An article about the Kansas State Wildcats realignment says, rapid escalation of television contract money has fueled this entire process. This means that a surge in revenue from television contract money has caused college football conferences to see realignment as a great way to increase their visibility and opportunity. New rivalries will also come out of conference realignment, and rivalries bring tradition and heart to a conference, meaning much more fans than usual will come to watch these big games between two powerful teams. Every conference wants to be the best, and if they bring in the best teams, they will be. The Power 5 conferences, including the Southeastern Conference, Atlantic Coast Conference, the Big 10, Big 12, and the Pac-12, are the best and most watched conferences. These conferences try to get the best teams from the other four, so they will be on top of the college football world. College football realignment has many pros and cons that conferences need to consider before adding or losing a team. One pro is that a conference may be able to stage a conference championship game that wasn't possible before. An example of this is in 2011 when Nebraska joined the Big 10, and in that same season, the conference had its inaugural conference championship game. Another pro is new rivalries and new matchups. Fans will like to see matchups that they have never seen before and fierce rivalries that could live on for decades. But the real goal of conference realignment is to increase your conference's revenue. Bringing a team to a conference brings that team's fan base with it, meaning the conference may may be able to charge more for conference network for companies to use their ads on the conference network. Adding a good team to a conference can be dangerous if the conference starts underperforming when it gets Adding a good team to a conference can be dangerous if the team starts underperforming when it gets to the conference. That's not good because the number of fans that come to watch their team play will significantly decrease due to the team's inability to stay good at the sport. Another con is that if new rivalries are formed, viewership may not surge like the conference hoped it would when adding the team. It could also hurt the traditions that fan bases are used to, such as if a team leaves the conference, its rivalry with another team in that conference may be gone for good. Currently, Texas and Oklahoma are making a big move from the Big 12 to the SEC. This is most likely one of the most impactful realignments that has happened in recent years. Texas and Oklahoma are two impactful teams in college football, with Texas claiming 4 national titles and Oklahoma claiming 7. Because of this, the realignment has caused some confusion throughout college football, because if both programs join the SEC's West Division, just the division itself may be more powerful than some other Power 5 conferences. Alabama, one of the best college football teams, will play Oklahoma, also one of the best college football teams, every season. And with other historically good teams such as Louisiana State, Auburn, and Texas A&M, this division will greatly outperform the opposing division in the East. Because of this, the SEC will most likely decide to move to 4 different divisions, each consisting of 4 teams. But what will happen to the Big 12? When Texas and Oklahoma leave, the best teams in the conference will most likely be Baylor and Oklahoma State. While these 2 teams are good, they don't have near the history or prestige that Oklahoma and Texas do. The conference also has the option of adding many up-and-coming teams that are rising in popularity and skill, such as BYU, Houston, the University of Central Florida, and Cincinnati. And with the current trend of conferences beginning to increase their number of teams to 16, this might be more likely than most people would think. So now the Big 12 has to make a decision. Will it remain a conference and try to build themselves back up to where they were, or will it dissolve, which in turn makes it seem set to find new conferences to join? College football realignment is all about money, competitiveness, and tradition. When money is the main component behind realignment, tradition and competitiveness can oftentimes be overlooked or even ignored. But realignment can still bring new and exciting matchups between teams that have never even played before. Thank you, and please welcome Ava Osborne, who is speaking on pandemics.
According to the CNBC Newsletter, COVID-19 is possibly the deadliest virus in United States history. Since we've all experienced the ravages of COVID over the past 2 years, I thought it would be interesting to research past pandemics and how it affected our approach to battling COVID-19. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention defines a pandemic as a sudden increase of the number of cases of an infectious disease within a community or geographic area in a specific time period. Throughout history, pandemics have greatly affected the United States. The Spanish flu, polio, H1N1, and measles are some of the most widespread and deadliest viruses to spread across our country. Even though the United States handled these situations differently because of the resources, knowledge, and technology available during each outbreak, each pandemic led us to better understand just how to best battle a disease when it does begin to spread. Over the years of research conducted, our country's scientists and medical professionals learned about the trajectory and behavior of diseases, the importance of remaining in community to fight the disease, and the importance of vaccinations. The Spanish flu of 1918 was the deadliest in history. Around 675,000 Americans were killed. At the time of the outbreak, no effective drugs or vaccines were available to treat this flu. Complicating this was the fact that there was a shortage of doctors and nurses due to World War I. Officials ordered shutdowns of public places, ordered citizens to wear masks, and it was suggested that people avoid shaking hands and spitting in public. Many of these suggestions are the same that were recommended during the COVID pandemic. By December of 1919, the pandemic came to an end because of those who were infected, died, or developed immunity.
This did not incite his interest in what caused this pandemic. 90 years later, scientists discovered what made this strain of flu so deadly: a group of 3 genes. Through this continued research, scientists hope to learn more to help in the fight against future outbreaks. In 2009, Americans were faced with another deadly strain of flu, H1N1, otherwise known as swine flu. Over the year-long outbreak, 12,000 Americans died. Americans were quick to adopt health recommendations that were used in the Spanish flu outbreak, such as frequent hand washing, avoiding public places, and mask wearing. However, a vaccine for H1N1 became quickly available. Similar to the reaction of the COVID vaccine, there was much distrust in this vaccine, even though it was deemed safe and effective. This distrust led to the development of health communication efforts that would address these misgivings on a larger scale if there would be another serious disease outbreak. The efforts of similar groups are evident today during the COVID pandemic. Communications of effective disease-preventing measures have been found to be one of the most important measures when fighting a pandemic. Both polio and measles outbreaks are similar in that both diseases have almost been completely eradicated due to required immunizations in the U.S. Both reached epidemic proportions, but due to the work of scientists, they were developed to fight both. Polio was eliminated in the Western Hemisphere in 1994. It still does circulate in Afghanistan and Pakistan, but vigorous vaccination programs have been used to eliminate those pockets. The MMR, or measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, has reduced the disease by more than 99%. Any cases still found in the U.S. are reported due to travelers from foreign countries. As seen from the information above, both polio and measles are not really a threat to the public health of U.S. citizens anymore due to the vaccinations. So what have we learned from these past pandemics when it comes to fighting COVID? We have learned that the measures taken to fight the Spanish flu, H1N1, polio, and measles are all effective in the fight against COVID. The Spanish flu led to global cooperation about pandemic preparedness and communication. It also led to an expanded role of healthcare workers across the country and world. The increased global health led to the formation of a global influenza surveillance in 1952. Similar groups have been formed to keep an outlook for diseases like COVID. Overall, these past pandemics help to shape how we handle these situations. It is important we are informed with the correct information so we know how to prevent this from happening in the future. Our scientists are still learning new things every day about this and what we can do as a society. Thank you. Please welcome Grace Arnett, who is speaking on wild pigs.
Invasive animal species can cause huge problems. One animal species that has caused tremendous problems is the wild pig. The number of wild pigs increases yearly, even though some are being killed. In Georgia alone, there are 200,000 to 600,000 pigs, which is more than the human population of New Orleans in 2018. These pigs have been causing problems for farmers all over the world. Today, I'll be explaining where wild pigs came from and how they became invasive, what kinds of problems they are causing for agricultural businesses, and how to prevent them from causing as much damage. Wild pigs are very tough animals. They can live through just about any conditions. Wild pigs can live in grasslands, wetlands, rainforests, savannas, scrublands, and temperate forests, allowing them to be almost anywhere. They are also able to repopulate very quickly. However, these pigs do not originate in the Americas. Wild pigs are native to the continent of Eurasia. They first arrived in Canada from the 1980s to the 1990s. They were brought over as livestock and for hunting. They then escaped where they were released. This eventually led them to breed with domesticated pigs, which may have caused them to become invasive over time. A business director named Don Holt said, "If you were going to design a good species to adapt and get established, feral swine would fit that way." Wild pigs can repopulate almost as quickly as flies, indicating that this does not help with the number of pigs. One female can carry up to 2 litters a year with up to 12 piglets in a litter. A wild pig can start having pigs about 9 months of age and can live until they are around 8 years old. So as a whole, one pig can have roughly 192 pigs in its lifetime. In Georgia alone, there are around 80,000 new piglets born every year. Since the pig is an animal that can repopulate so fast, this is a possible result for their invasiveness. It can affect certain careers, such as farmers. Wild pigs are an animal that root or dig in the ground. This is how they eat their food. However, this way of living can generate significant problems for farmers all over the world.
Wild pigs have caused damage to cultural and archaeological resources. These animals nationwide caused about $2.5 billion of damage in just 1 year. One farmer can lose up to $37 per pig, and collectively that adds up to about $5 million of damage a year for one farmer. Uprooting wild pigs can do for a farmer's crops, meaning they get bad income for that crop. A farmer named Brad Parker said that dealing with hogs can be expensive, from buying certain types of fencing to hunting equipment to traps and reloading. He says hogs can be thousands of dollars worth of damage per night. Not only can wild pigs ruin a farmer's crops, but they can also spread diseases to livestock. Any wild animal can carry diseases, but pigs particularly carry quite a few. Two of these illnesses are vascular stomatitis and classical swine fever. However, there are many more. This can potentially come back to death of their animals. However, not only can pigs spread illnesses and diseases to animals, but they can also spread them to us. Some of these illnesses would be Salmonella, Toxoplasmosis, reactive mange, E. coli, and many more. All of these illnesses can cause you to become very sick and potentially be hospitalized. Pigs can spread many different illnesses and diseases, but because of these things, you wouldn't want them. Nonetheless, there are a few ways to get rid of them. A trap would be useful. There are so many different ways to trap a pig, but all of them come with a little bit of a challenge. Traps and techniques to try and handle the number of pigs you have on your own can be challenging. Pigs come and go as they're looking for food, so finding the exact spot where they are can be difficult. Traps for wild pigs come in all different shapes and sizes. There are trapdoors, baiting traps, net traps, and many more. All of these are effectively used, but one trap that I found to work the best is the crowd trap. Using the crowd trap, you can trap a number of pigs at one time, making it so that you can get rid of them all at once. However, there are a few downfalls to this trap. This trap is a trap that you need to be out there waiting to take them. So you need to be out there at the right time. Nevertheless, there are a few different kind of traps that you can take out. Some of these would be more like a trapdoor. Wild pigs are an animal that can live through just about any conditions and are extremely tough. These animals have caused huge problems for farmers and other agricultural businesses worldwide. For many years, people have been looking and trying to find a solution to this problem. So far, this invasive species has outsmarted us in finding how to control its population. I hope that in the future we will not have to wipe out this population completely, but be able to reach a controllable number to handle these types of problems before they occur. Thank you. Please welcome Walt Adams, who is speaking on the Knox expedition.
Henry Knox faced a great journey through snow, over frozen rivers, all while carrying heavy artillery. Knox, a Revolutionary War soldier, was tasked by General George Washington to go and retrieve the artillery needed to defeat the British in Boston. Today I will share who Henry Knox was, what problems he faced on his journey, and how the American colonists defeated the British in Boston to end the American Revolution. In the spring of 1775, the British attempted a raid on a weapons cache just outside of Boston. The British were now in Boston fighting against the colonists. General George Washington arrived to take charge of the colonial troops and realized that the colonists badly needed artillery if they wanted to stand a chance against the British. A couple of days before the Battle of Bunker Hill, two forts were raided by Benedict Arnold, Ethan Allen, and a small force of colonists from what is now the state of Vermont. This small force of colonists was known as the Green Mountain Boys. The two forts' names were Fort Ticonderoga and Fort Crown Point, and they were both located in upstate New York. Both of the forts had a lot of heavy artillery, like cannons, mortars, and howitzers. These cannons were originally made for the French army and had a motto engraved on the barrel. The motto was Ultima Ratio Regum, which means the last argument of kings. 48 British soldiers were killed by the Americans, and only one American soldier died. Henry Knox was a 25-year-old bookseller from Boston, Massachusetts. After the Battle of Bunker Hill, Knox came to Washington with a bold proposal. Henry wanted to travel to Fort Ticonderoga to acquire the heavy artillery from him. Knox impressed Washington with his determination, ingenuity, energy, and knowledge of artillery. Knox loved military history and quickly became friends with George Washington. They had to cross the Hudson River a total of 4 times, but the weather was so unpredictable and Washington didn't wait for approval by Congress on November 16th and instead sent Knox to go and retrieve the heavy artillery from Fort Ticonderoga. This journey was supposed to last 2 weeks, but 4 days later, on December 5th, Knox reached Fort Ticonderoga and chose 59 pieces of artillery that weighed 160 tons, or 120,000 pounds. One of the cannons was nicknamed Old Snow and shot a 24-pound cannonball. There were several cannons known as Big Berthas, which were 11 feet long and weighed 5,000 pounds. Immediately, he sent his men to start disassembling the artillery. Then, the cannons were carried on land to the northern end of Lake George. When they arrived at the lake, they were met by 3 boats, 2 of which were a ship called a gunboat, and the other was a ship for Knox to ride on. They loaded the artillery onto the 2 gondolas and started sailing across Lake George. Knox's boat arrived at Fort George, but they couldn't see the other 2 boats behind them, so they sailed back to go find them. They found them and realized that as the ship began to sail, it had become grounded. It also began to sink because of the weight of the heavy artillery on board. It was almost a disaster, but the water was bailed out and the artillery arrived safely at the southern end of Lake George. Overall, it took 8 days to cross Lake George. They made it across just as the lake began to freeze over. Knox and his men built 42 sleds that weighed 5,400 pounds. The sleds were used to pull the artillery across the snowy terrain with 160 oxen. Then he wrote a letter to George Washington to tell him about the sleds and the oxen and how he hoped to present him with a noble train of artillery in a couple of days. They had to cross the Hudson River a total of 4 times, but the weather was so unpredictable and the ice wasn't thick enough, so Knox sent his men to go and pour extra water on top of the ice so it would be thicker the next day. Even though the men did this, the ice was still not thick enough for the heavy artillery. One person was required to carry an axe in case the cannon broke through the ice so they could cut the rope to the oxen so they wouldn't fall and drown into the freezing river. When they crossed the Hudson River, the ice was too thin and several cannons broke through, but they were retrieved each time with the help of locals in Albany. Ice and snow impacted Knox's progress. The first of the cannons were delivered to Albany, New York on January 4th. John Adams wrote that he later saw the equipment called the Noble Train of Artillery pass through Framingham, Massachusetts on January 25th. Knox and his expedition reached Cambridge, which is just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, on January 27th. General Washington's men distracted the British troops in Boston while thousands of other men helped transport the artillery all over Boston. The colonists at Dorchester Heights also chopped down trees and painted them to look like cannons so the British would be afraid of them. The delivery of the artillery from Fort Ticonderoga forced General William Howe to retreat and leave Boston. Later, General Howe says, "The rebels did more in one night than the whole army could have done in 1 month." After that, General William Howe gave orders for the evacuation out of the city of Boston. Henry Knox received a colonel's commission from the Second Continental Congress and was also appointed chief of the Continental Army on November 17th. 1 year later, right after the Battle of Trenton, which his artillery played a huge role in, he was promoted to brigadier general. After his expedition, he became one of Washington's most trusted advisors because he pulled something off that was extremely hard to do. Thank you. Please welcome William Brown, who is speaking on Disney Imagineers.
Disney Imagineers have found a way to take fictional stories and create lanes of rides based upon them. Ever since I was a baby, my family's gone to Disney World every few years. I've also always been fascinated at the attention to detail Imagineers have in constructing these grand attractions and structures. With this attention to detail, there are lots of cool tricks that make everything so perfect. I've not only heard about all this information, but I've also experienced it firsthand. Today, I will share many facts about what Imagineers have done to create these amazing places, to include architectural design, visual illusions, and different symbols. When Walt Disney was creating and imagining the first of his parks, Disneyland, he obviously needed a few extra hands. Today, those extra hands are called Imagineers. If you're an architect, writer, artist, engineer, model builder, technician, or designer, you are eligible to become a Walt Disney Imagineer. Imagineers are, in my opinion, the heart and soul of Walt Disney parks, movies, and merchandise. Imagineers are trained to not be traditional. How many Imagineers does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is, does it have to be a light bulb? Imagineers take the notion of thinking outside the box way beyond distance. This statement really sums up the minds that are used to create these parks and attractions. Probably the most important methods Imagineers will use is architectural design. When you stand at the train station gazing down Main Street in the USA, what do you notice? Is it Cinderella's castle, or is it the row of storefronts One thing I noticed is the grandiose scale of Cinderella's castle. You may be surprised that the castle is only 189 feet tall. This is because of Florida height regulation laws. When faced with these laws, Imagineers came up with a few solutions. The main solution was that each floor brick gets smaller the higher it is on the castle. Another is the paint color gets lighter and lighter to make the castle seem taller when you're up close. Another way Disney uses architectural design to trick our eye is the buildings on Main Street, USA. The buildings all have different heights, but most of them are actually very similar in height. The way Imagineers do this is they make every floor a tiny bit smaller each floor the building has. For example, every ground floor is a full floor. Every second floor is about 5/8 the size of the first floor, and the third floor is roughly half the size of the first floor. Imagineers also use the trick of making bricks smaller and paint lighter. These are just two examples of how Imagineers use architectural design, and these examples are used in every single park. A big part of Imagineering is immersing people in the story world. One way they do this is by visual illusions. The most important thing to Imagineers is what we are made to see and made not to see. The easy and common way to do this is actually using paint. Have you ever wondered how these large attractions fit in very little space? Well, they are actually taking place inside large show buildings. Now you may be wondering how you've rarely seen these buildings. Remember how I said they love to use paint? Well, Disney has designed two very specific paint colors, those being Go Away Green and Blending Blue. These colors are made to blend in with the sky and vegetation throughout the parks, making the object painted visually disappear. Now, show buildings aren't the only things painted these colors. Disney will paint lampposts, fences, and most famously the door to the exclusive club, Club 33. Have you ever wondered how when you're in one land at a Disney park, you almost never see a trace of another land in the park? Well, this is another reason Imagineers are very big on their painting skills and landscaping. When Disney was constructing the Morocco Pavilion in Epcot's World Showcase, they noticed an eyesore sticking out into the sky. Funny enough, this eyesore is actually Hollywood Studios' Tower of Terror. To fix this, Imagineers painted the backside of the structure to match the color scheme of the Morocco Pavilion, making it blend in and become part of the pavilion. Imagineers also love the greenery that is intricately placed throughout the parks. In Magic Kingdom in Florida, Liberty Square and Fantasyland are right on top of each other. These two lands have completely different themes, so to hide that, Imagineers place plants so perfectly that you can't see or even hear the other land. Imagineers aren't just building, they also plant plants. Many people will bring up the damp and musty smell of the water on various water rides in Disney, or the iconic smell of Main Street, USA. Now, while there is real popcorn being made on Main Street and needed chemicals in the water on water rides, these are also placed here for a reason. Part of how we make memories is how we use our senses, and Disney found out that scent is a big contributor to the memories we make. The smell of fresh popcorn just isn't enough to permanently attach to our brains, so Imagineers invented a way to make these smells stronger than ever. Their invention is called the Smellitizer, and it can pump out almost any smell depending on what's needed throughout the parks. What these machines do is they pump the pungent smell in front of a strong flow of air. From there, the airflow will help the smell penetrate our noses and attach to our memories. When we have smells that are tied to our memories, it makes them stand out and you almost never forget them. Imagineers also use their smellitizers to make us want to buy something. When you walk past the ice cream shop on Main Street, the smell of vanilla ice cream and fresh waffle cones is so strong that it really makes you want some ice cream. Disney uses this trick all around their property and not just in the parks. Anyone who's been to Disney World understands how these tiny details can make your trip to the parks better. These are also just a few of the many ways Imagineers place us into the stories we know and love. Now, next time you go to a Disney park or on the property, be sure to remember these details and keep an eye out for anything else you may find. Thank you. Please welcome Ron Copeland, who is speaking on Michael Jackson.
Michael Jeffrey Jackson was born on August 29, 1958 in Gary, Indiana. His singing career began with the Jackson 5 in 1964 and ended in 1979. He started his solo career in 1979 with his hit album Off the Wall. From hit singles to child abuse allegations, he experienced many highs and lows until his death in 2009. Today we'll examine the start of his career, his musical accomplishments, and the controversy that surrounded him towards the end of his life. Michael Jackson started his career with the popular group Jackson 5. The group got started in 1964. He was the lead singer, and other members included his brothers Jackie, Ticho, Jermaine, and Marlon. The musical style included touches of pop, blues, and disco. In 1968, they signed with Motown Records. On October 7, 1969, they released their first single, I Want You Back, which rose quickly to #1 on the pop and R&B charts. On December 18, 1969, they released their first album, Diana Ross Presents The Jackson 5. After that, they went on to release 15 more studio albums. The most famous one is ABC, which was released on May 8, 1970. Also in 1970 is one of the most famous songs from that album, also named ABC, knocked off the Beatles' Let It Be out of the #1 spot on the Billboard charts. In 1975, the Jackson 5's last album on Motown was released, then Epic Records signed to them. In 1976, their band released their first album as The Jacksons. Their band name changed to The Jacksons because Motown had the rights to their original name. The Epic, they released 4 studio albums between 1976 and 1981. In 1984, Michael and the Jacksons started on their Victory Tour, which started on July 6th and ended on December 9th. 2300 Jackson Street was the 16th and last studio album, and the final for the record label Epic. In 1997, the Jackson 5 was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. After the Jackson 5, Jackson went on to have a very successful solo career. He was known as the King of Pop, and it showed in his accomplishments. He won a total of 13 Grammys, 5 Billboard Awards, 6 Brit Awards, the British Phonographic Industry, and 26 American Music Awards. 8 of his 13 Grammys were won in 1984, which is the highest amount ever to be won by one person in a single year. He had a total of 13 #1 albums. The most successful came in 1982 and 87 with Thriller and Bad. As it stands right now, his success has gone to the point that he has his own award name right there, the BMI Michael Jackson. As it stands right now, his net worth is $75 million. He is also just one of 22 acts with more than one certified platinum album. In 1984, he got a start on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. In 2010, he won the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award and won the Grammy Legend Award in 1993. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a solo artist in 2001 and was inducted in 1997 with the Jackson 5. Jackson was also instrumental in the production of We Are the World, a song that helped the famine in Africa. And being an inspiration to normal people is wonderful. Being an inspiration to other inspirations can be magical. It wasn't just the love of nature artist, it wasn't just the love of nature, the music and the dancing that made him an inspiration. It was the love of nature artist that inspired artists to be the same way. Michael Jackson can also be considered a trendsetter by the number of people he's influenced. People like Beyonce, Madonna, Jay-Z, and Jay-Z have all claimed to be influenced by the King of Pop. He opened the minds of the world through his music, Justin Timberlake said, and Beyonce said that sometimes you have to forget technique. Even though Michael Jackson had much success in the music industry, his awards and influence cannot outshadow the controversies that surrounded him in the 1990s and 2000s. In 1993, he was accused of sexual abuse by a 13-year-old boy. He spent years in court battling his charges. Even though he was acquitted of the 70 counts of child abuse in 2005, many still believe he did it because in 1994, he made an out-of-court settlement and paid $20 million to the alleged victim. The public viewed this as an admission of guilt by Michael Jackson. Jackson has also faced much controversy about his ever-changing appearance and drug abuse. He was known to take painkillers, antidepressants, and other drugs. His drug use led to Jackson's death on June 25, 2009. He suffered at 2:26 p.m. He suffered a cardiac arrest caused by a combination of drugs, some given by his doctor, which resulted in his death. Michael Jackson was the King of Pop, whose journey to the top was overshadowed by the difficulties he faced. He had a compelling start with the Jackson 5, numerous accomplishments, influenced by countless artists, but sadly died, shuttered in much controversy. Thank you. Please welcome Wilson Walker, who is speaking on homelessness.
Homelessness affects millions of people around the world. Through certain events, some people are kicked out onto the streets and they aren't able to live in a home anymore. We might take things like living in a house or going to school for granted, but the truth is, all those things are blessings. Homelessness, although it's not an issue we always concern ourselves with, is something that we can help with. Georgia has homeless people, as does Columbus. It was here before the global pandemic and is still here, and the effort made by churches and Christians to help the homeless is still evident all around the world. Georgia hasn't always been known for having a very high homeless population, so you may not think of it as a problem. The thing is, wherever you go, from a lot to barely any, there is homelessness. According to the Georgia Sun, there are an estimated 580,466 homeless people in America. Here in Georgia, as of 2022, about 1 in every 1,000 people were homeless. Also, our poverty rate is a rather high 13.2%, and those living in poverty have a greater chance of becoming homeless. Along with a higher than average poverty rate, it is evident how there are many people in need of our help. The COVID pandemic has affected many things recently on a global scale. Since 2020, the pandemic has negatively impacted our daily life and our economy. One of the main effects that the pandemic has had is on the homeless, since it is only worse than something that has been here forever. Outreach programs by social services have been limited since the pandemic started, and certain economic deficiencies have affected the homeless population. There were a myriad of evictions that occurred as a result of the loss of jobs, and this eventually led to not having a home for many people. To help prevent the spread of COVID-19, a federal law was passed that prevented evictions from happening, which soon came to be a burden for landlords. Since the pandemic isn't as severe as when it started and the spread of the virus isn't, we aren't as limited as to what we can do to help. There's much to say about homelessness and whether or not we should care to make a difference in someone else's life. The Bible teaches us to be charitable, and in a verse in the chapter of Matthew says, "Bear one another's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ." Jesus also says, "Love your neighbor as yourself." These are just a few examples of what the Bible teaches us about loving and caring for one another, even if we may not know them. Homelessness is something that has been around for a long time, and through the examples that Jesus Christ makes, we can learn how to help those who can't always help themselves. To know what Jesus says and does about these things is also important to know Jesus' history. Since biblical times, Christians have been the leading helpers of those in poverty or experiencing homelessness. Jesus Christ may have lived 2,000 years ago, but the lessons he taught and the way he lived are still ways idolized by Christians. Although we're not perfect and never will be, we can always strive to be better with the right things in mind. The Bible is clear about the way we should try to live our lives, like Jesus. Even though some people back then weren't seen as fortunate or desirable, Jesus still chose to love them the same way he loved everyone else. He spent time with people who were outcasts and despised by their very own people. His own disciples, who followed him no matter what, literally walked out of their home for him. He is the reason that we should help people in the first place, and there are many ways that we can do this. Some of the ways that we can help the homeless don't take much effort at all. As Christians, we often associate ourselves with helping other people since it is what God commands us to do, and we believe it is our duty. Many of us help out in our local community, whether it's volunteering at a homeless shelter, hosting an open Bible study for anyone who wants to attend, or being active in a charitable group. Speaking of homeless shelters and charities, there are multitudes of organizations ready to help. Shelters and charities are the only ones who help the homeless, however. Churches often have donation boxes or offering plates passed around at church services in an effort to raise money for either their church or a charity the church supports. This is just one of the ways that churches help the homeless, since they often host events such as fundraisers for toys, clothing, food, and hygiene items. It's important that churches help out the homeless, since they are likely to help out in the areas in which they are located. It's also important that they connect with the homeless, because the only difference in a person's life can be them liking a relationship with God. If they came to know God, they can have a better understanding of why they're being helped and how God has a plan for them. Here in Columbus, Georgia, there are some organizations that you may have heard of that help out with the homeless. Open Door, Valley Rescue, and Safe House Ministries are all organizations that devote their time to being helpful to those in need. One organization that really stood out to me was Safe House Ministries, who personally helps individuals struggling with homelessness or poverty. They opened in November of 2010 and have been serving the community ever since. From giving meals to providing specific needs to clients, they try their best to help people transition into the community in the best way possible. There are many organizations that work globally. One of these is Salvation Army, a Christian organization established in over 130 countries. It was started by a pastor who left behind everything just to preach to the poor, homeless, and less fortunate. According to Ms. Owens, my science teacher and a former employee of the Salvation Army, they help the homeless in numerous ways. This includes driving around and providing food to those on the streets, providing affordable housing that will sustain them for years, inviting them to sleep in centers with more beds, and providing them with new clothing. As you can see, homelessness has always been around, before the pandemic and even in Georgia since it was established. There are many ways that the homeless can be supported and helped, such as through churches, shelters, and organizations. Overall, there are many ways that we individually can help, from volunteering, donating, or devoting your life to helping others. We need to realize that it truly is our duty to help those who can't always help themselves, and all it takes is a little time and a little effort. After all, the Bible says in many ways that we are the hands and feet of Christ.
one more round. Parents and guests, thank you for joining us. Students, y'all can go back to class. Parents, y'all may come up and visit and take pictures if you'd like to for a few minutes.
I know, right?
You were looking crazy.
I'll put them in there too. Yeah, you send me yours. What? What? You ready?
You're gonna go get your book bag.
I know the film is recorded.
Thank you.
Our sponsor at Michael Jackson in Florida, and then a friend of mine invited me to the same concert in Atlanta. So.
I didn't know one for that.
He's an artist. Sharing information about him.
Y'all look fabulous. You look amazing. So good job. I'm so proud of him.
I have books and
I'm proud of him. Feels good to be done, doesn't it?
well done. It's well written and
Let me get this one and then I'll give it all.
Won't be long. Do it. Thank you.
Okay, that was so good. I loved it. No matter what career, I still like to talk about Around the World. Favorite song? I can't listen to it without getting teary. I still can't watch it without getting I'm sure it is. Okay, I don't think you'll let me get I'll shift that way. I could just say that. Check this one up. I'm gonna get one of these now. Yes. I promise you it's fun. There you go.
I'm the tie guy. Not so much. I know.
You can just get through chopping with the tie. Check them out. Check them out. There you go.
Thank you for all your help.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate y'all.
Absolutely.
Way to go, Paul. Great job. Wait, it's like
I'm just wondering, like,
I don't have a great really best day. Yeah, it's okay, somebody look at you. Like,
Oh,
look like you were about to
wow.
Like, you made it like
Oh, no, everybody's talking about No, I went up to the well, that's real.
Yeah, I don't like this. Me and Jim did this.
Even like in the classroom, like you can look at the same body and you just like this year.
Yeah, they just have to put them down and then check that out, and then it's usually this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
This time, it was like kind of like this.
I'm surprised. Because I waited out. But luckily I don't. At this point, you know, no, I was on the third page, like, oh. You're like, we were like, like, she would like swing your slides, and you're like, realignment.
Hey, what was my height? What was my height?
It's like 5, exactly.
Okay. Oh my god, that means I was a minute. Okay.
I would.